What do I do with my hands? All right, take one. I see Fred do that, so I think it's a thing I'm supposed to do. Fred Williams, my best friend. Don't tell Dylan I said that, or Richard, or Mike. Anyway, yeah, we start in Harry's Situations channel. We just dropping names over here. My name is Harry Wagner from Harry's Situations, and you see a lot of walk-around videos. They seem to be popular these days, so we're gonna do a walk-around video on my tracker, and maybe we'll do a little ride-around later too. So this is a 2001 Chevy Tracker. I've had a lot of off-road vehicles over the years. Some work better than others. The premise with this, it was intended from the start to be super lightweight and super capable, and I think we really accomplished those goals. So when I say we, who I'm talking about is mainly Jesse Haines, who is a rock crawling competitor. He's won world championships. He happens to live here in Reno, where I live, which is lucky. So Jesse did all the tube work, suspension design, chassis work on my tracker, which from the outside looks, I mean, it doesn't look like a stock tracker, but it has sheet metal. It still has most of the frame, but then the suspension's all different, and there's a lot of tube work done and things like that, and special little modifications that Jesse and I have learned over the years through our experiences. I don't really know where I'm going. Is this all in one take? Do I just keep going? What do I do now? No, So I originally had a four-wheel drive tracker that I was planning to build, and when I took it to Jesse, he said, this is the wrong vehicle, you need to sell it. So started from square one and got a two-wheel drive tracker actually. The reason for that is we use a divorced Samurai transfer case. So the Samurai transfer case has aftermarket gears that are super low in low range. They're 6.4 to 1 trail tough gears, and in high range, they're actually 1.4 to 1. So it's like an underdrive. And that was great because with the small engine and the 37-inch Maxxis Trepadors, it wasn't low enough even with 529 gears in the Toyota diffs in high range. So the Samurai transfer case really helps with that. They're also lightweight, compact, relatively strong. I have broken one, but for the most part, they work pretty good. And again, that was Jesse's influence in trying to keep this vehicle as light as possible. So it was an exercise in creativity in order to make the vehicle light. We have Spider-Trax brakes that are super light with Willwood aluminum calipers. It's got heat-treated chromoly links, only 7/8 inch rod ends. So typically you see 1.25 inch rod ends, 250 wall, 2-inch diameter links are pretty common in rock crawling, but by keeping everything light and scaled down, we were able to make the entire vehicle more capable without adding that weight. So we've got the rear unlocked right now. We're going to use the cutting brakes to pivot around here as we go up.
You need to go your way a little. There you go. Good.
So a lot of people start with the Samurai, and Samurais are great. I love them. But then they add things like power steering. They add fuel-injected motors out of later Suzukis. So by starting with a Tracker, I have a 2-liter engine that's fuel-injected, makes 120 horsepower, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's more than a 1.3 liter in a Samurai. Factory transmission, and then Toyota-based axles. So they're diamond fabricated housings with Toyota electronic lockers in them. The rear is offset actually to match the Samurai transfer case, which has offset outputs. And then the front uses Hellfire knuckles and RCV Burfields. So pretty strong in a compact package, a lot of ground clearance with the 37s. And the axles so far have been pretty strong. I have broken a rear axle shaft, but I mean, that just is part and parcel. It comes with the territory when you're out rock crawling. So this is where the cutting brakes really come in handy. I have a lot of vehicles. This is by far the most capable of all of them. It's not great on the road, but I take this thing down and I pre-run King of the Hammers every year in it, and It does things that I can't do in my Toyota pickup, my Jeep, my Ford. It's just super stable. Jesse actually cut off the front and rear of the frame and then fabricated new frame rails. He moved them up, which kept the ride height low. It still gives us up travel with the ADS air shocks. It uses 3 links and panhard bars front and rear. That was another thing people were concerned about. Both panhard bars go the same direction. And I had some people saying, oh, when you go to turn, it's gonna unload. People say air shocks unload. The way the suspension geometry is on this, the panhard bars are completely flat at ride height, similar to a moon buggy, and it is super stable. The roll center is really high. It handles really well on the road and on the trail. Another question I get a lot is about the wheelbase. So these things are relatively short and the proportions are really deceiving. The front axle was moved forward 7 inches and the rear axle was moved back 9 inches. So the wheelbase is actually 103 inches, pretty similar to like a regular cab Toyota pickup or a Jeep LJ or a Scrambler or something like that. It could be longer, but it's a pretty good wheelbase. I didn't want to comp cut it or make it so that it's so long that the axles are completely disconnected from the vehicle. So we went as far as we could while still keeping the appearance of a tracker. You can see the front axle was actually moved so far forward that the headlights were cut in order to clear. Which brings me to the next people that helped me with this build. So Jesse Haines is a super talented fabricator and he did all of the tube work, the suspension design, the cage, the frame, but he's also a one-man shop. So he has his limitations and those are the things he really likes to do. He's less interested in doing things like wiring, plumbing. So I went to Samco Fabrication here in Reno. My good friends, I've done a lot of projects with them in the past. They prep race cars for the desert. So this build was really no big deal to them. They did all of the wiring, they plumbed the brakes, they plumbed the cooling system, and made the final push to get the tracker running, did a full prep on it like they would do for a desert race car. So Sam Cothran, Alex Baker, who did the wiring, Austin Hall, Vic Carusco, those guys are great and they really helped me out in getting the tracker completed. So the interior is another part of the tracker that really makes it unique. When we were building this, I came over one day and Jesse had thrown the stock dash in the trash. And I said, what am I gonna do? It's like, it was really hard to build a cage around, but I know some guys that do sheet metal work. So I didn't quite know what to expect, but he introduced me to John Connor from CR Fab down in Dayton, and John blew my mind. So he built this dash, looks like something out of a race car. It's got circuit breakers and toggle switches, odometer gauges. We later added the rugged radio and headsets. The one thing with all this sheet metal is it gets a little noisy in here when you're going down the road. We added the grab handle for the passenger that's adjustable. My friend Austin Hall at Samco built that, brazed in coins at the end, which is kind of his signature. The steering wheel comes off like a race car. It's got trophy truck style sun visors here that are from CarTech. Vic at Samco put those in for me. So a lot of neat little tricks. John did the door panels, which have my logo in them. That guy's really an artist, and that really was the final piece to bring the tracker all together and make it special. So now I'm going to unlock the rear. Okay. So we actually went into double low there. This has a Trail Tough rock block, which they actually don't make anymore. It fits between the transmission and the divorce transfer case and offers a doubler similar to what you would have in something like a Toyota pickup. So most of the time I don't use it, but in real technical spots like that, it definitely comes in handy for the added control. So John Connor from CR Fab started by building the dash, and he really blew my mind. And He was building a Toyota-based buggy and it had a spool in it, and he said he really wanted an ARB air locker. So I got him an air locker and brought it to him as a surprise, and then he really went nuts after that. So we built all this sheet metal in the back. There's a 10-gallon fuel cell here. He's got quick pins with storage on the side and max tie-down points, and it was great for day trips. But we later added, Austin Hall from Samco Fabrication built this rack for me out of chromoly, so I can put all my gear up top. I can still store my spare tire back here, and the rack opens up so you can get to the fuel cell. It even has a prop rod to hold it open. More TIG welded, brazed on coins for my travels around the world. So a lot of little details. That's what I really love about this rig. I think is what sets it apart. No offense to Jeeps, I own one, but this is pretty unique, and all the little details, like Samco Fabrication used this arrow tubing here in the back bars. So when the spare tire's in here, the straps go through this spot here, and if you rub anything, it won't abrade the strap because it's in the middle.
There you go. All right, straighten it out. Right there, right there. There you go. All right, straighten it out. Right there, right there. Good. Very good. Yeah, passenger here. All right, now straight. Very good. Yeah, passenger here. All right, now straight.
So other things on the Tracker that I really like that are different from some of my other vehicles that I've had in the past: selectable lockers. It's got Toyota electronic lockers front and rear. I really usually leave the rear one off, and it has cutting brakes. So with the Samurai transfer case, I don't have front dig, which is where you can put it just in front wheel drive. It's popular with Atlas transfer cases, so you can turn real sharp. This doesn't have that ability, but by unlocking the rear locker and pulling the cutting brakes, I can still turn pretty sharp. And the tires right now have water in the front. So I actually have 80 pounds of water in each front tire. And that, again, adds to the capability. It lowers the center of gravity, it increases the traction. You can't drive it down the street, that's the trade-off. But on the trail, it does make a difference. Pointed at me, bud. So some things that I really think make the Tracker more capable than your average rock crawler are the low ride height. That's really popular right now, but you sacrifice up travel. By cutting the frame and repositioning it, Jesse was able to get us 4 inches of up travel with a 12-inch ADS air shock, but still keep the ride height really low. It's got sticky competition compound Maxxis Trepadors on it that stick to the rocks like glue. Those sort of modifications, the cutting brakes, are the little things that most vehicles don't have, but they make the difference between making it through obstacles and not a lot of time. So under the hood, we've still got the original 2-liter engine, but we added a different master cylinder here with the stock brake booster. A lot of the inner fender's been cut out to make room for this tube work. I carry a spare coil pack. I've got another serpentine belt under here. Pretty minimalist. I mean, it's a small engine, doesn't make a lot of power, but it's pretty light. And by not making a lot of power, it's allowed me to run smaller components like that Samurai transfer case, Toyota-based axles. One thing we had to add when the frame rails were cut, the factory radiator wouldn't fit anymore. So CBR made this custom radiator that's wider and thicker, but it's not as tall as the stock radiator to accommodate the new frame rails. Other than that, not a ton of changes under the hood. The Braille battery only weighs 9 pounds, so that's small. There's not a lot of reserve capacity, but small and light is the theme, and that continues that theme. There's actually a UTV winch from Come Up on the Tracker. Now I have that connected to the front axle. That allows me to suck the suspension down when I'm climbing and the suspension wants to unload. You can actually decrease the suspension travel and it'll allow you to get over some obstacles. So another trick that comes from the competition rock crawling world. It started raining on us out at Moon Rock, so we headed back to the shop with the Tracker. But I hope you enjoyed this first video from Harry Situations. It's the first of many in collaboration with All Terrain Family. We're gonna have things like features, not just on my vehicles, but my friends as well, and trail reports from all over the country and beyond, and then tech too, as we modify these vehicles to make them even more capable on the trail. So stay tuned and comment below and let us know what else you want to see.